What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with a preview for the Players' Championship. Last week at the Wells Fargo Championship, a pretty decent week. I don't want to say I told you to play Jason Day, but I told you to play Jason Day. No, just kidding. Congrats to all of those who joined me on being on the Jason Day bandwagon. I probably did not get enough out of it. The rest of my exposure was pretty mediocre despite having Jason Day in a bunch of lineups, but he closed it out, which is going to lead into an even more interesting Players' Championship week. Always a deep field. One of the best fields in all of golf, and now you've got basically all of the top stars rounding into form just as they embark on TPC Sawgrass, so it should be quite the event. Let's not waste any more time. Let's hop into, that's not the cheat sheet, let's hop into the cheat sheet. All of these tools are available on dfsondemand.com, everything that I see here, that you'll see here today. All right. 5 guys over $10,000. And before I jump into that, so many great players. There is going to be a ton of value in that $8,000 range, maybe even up to $9,000 is a plethora of riches. What are we going to do up here at the top? Well, if you look at these studs, none of them outside of Rory's coming in, 6th, 8th, 12th, and 35th in the last 4 years. None of them really have a ton of great course history, right? These guys have spouted off here a handful of times. Jason Day, your winner in 2016. In the other 2 years of bookmarking that, not very well. Jordan Spieth, a 4th place in 2014, has backed that up with 3 straight missed cuts. Justin Thomas, a 3rd place in 2016. DJ, a 12th place. That's been his best finish. And then you have Fowler here, if we go down just to 9,600, a win, but not much else there. So what are we looking for? We don't have a lot of great course history out of these, let's call it the top 5 guys. We've got some decent pops, but what do we have here? So, Jason Day, your winner last week, will be extremely popular. Rory McIlroy will be extremely popular. Both of those guys solidly going to be in my list of exposure, but I'm actually looking down below this. I'm willing to, and I'll say fade, but I'll have a little bit of exposure to them. I'll probably be underweight on the rest of the field, but I'm kind of looking to spend down here in the $10,300 range, and then underneath. So that's DJ and down. So what do we have here? Dustin Johnson, the #1 player in the world, coming in with, this is about the worst he could play, right? 16th, 10th, 7th, and 16th coming into this event. When we get to the tour stats, you're really going to see that he seems to fit the mold of this course despite not having a great course history. He does have a 12th place and a 28th in his last 2 starts here. So it's easy to make a case for any one of these guys. I'll take the discount. I'll take $10,300 on the guy who might be the best out of all 5 of these. This is really not a knock on the other players here. It's just this field is so incredible, we're going to have to draw some lines in the sand. I'm willing to take DJ at 10-3, where the rest of these guys are more expensive. And can you really convince me any of them is in a better situation to win this week than Dustin Johnson? Not really. It's below these guys where things are really going to start to get interesting, right? So Rickie Fowler, the really impressive and what I want to call it, visible win back in 2015 where he wins in the playoff. He does some incredible things. They've been showing the footage over and over and over again. That's going to be on the front of everyone's mind. Expect his ownership to be through the roof. Expect Sergio Garcia's ownership to be pretty significant. We'll pull up the course history chart here. Sergio Garcia in 10 starts at the Players, averaging 82 DraftKings points per start. That is the best of anyone with at least, 3 starts here? So let's see. Sergio, let's click on Sergio. We're sorted by year. Won it in 2018. Hasn't missed a cut since then. 4 total top 8 finishes. He had a 12th place back in 2011. Absolute menace at TPC Sawgrass for Sergio. And I wonder if this $9,000 price tag would have been a lot more expensive had he not missed the cut in his last 2 events. I'm willing to give him a pass there, right? The Masters, he really only missed the cut because he blew up and took, a 13 on a hole, right? Didn't he make a quintuple, or not quintuple, octuple bogey, whatever 8 over is? Essentially missed the cut on one hole alone. So I'm not really giving him, I can give him a pass there. And then, you know, a miscut at the Valero Texas Open, like, okay, so not so bad. 2 starts before that were a 4th and a 7th. So I think your pivots in this range become Jon Rahm, Justin Rose, and Paul Casey. Paul Casey, to me, is probably the guy I'll have the most of out of those handful of players that I just discussed. A 5th place last week at the Wells Fargo, a 15th at the Masters. He won earlier this year at the Valspar, and back-to-back top 25s here at Sawgrass coming in. It's going to be hard to find that for $8,900. A guy trending in the right direction who I still think is flying a bit under the radar. But Stenson, oh man, there's so many good options here. Stenson at 8,800 and Reed at 8,700. I'm basically all in on both of these guys. You know, I don't know. I haven't started making lineups yet. I don't know if you could start a lineup that's like Paul Casey, Henrik Stenson, Patrick Reed. I don't know what you'd end up with there, but I'm considering it. So we'll talk a little bit more about Stenson when we get to the tour stats, but just to show you while we're here, you know, his lead-in form, no worse than a 6th place in any one of his first 3 starts. He's had some decent success here in the past with a 16th last year, a 17th in 2015. Again, we don't really have that one stud who stands out at Sawgrass, you know, outside of Sergio, who's done it for 10 years. There's been just a lot of randomness essentially here, which if you look at the past winners, that plays out. There's a lot of randomness in here. So you have Day, Fowler, Tiger, Sergio, and Stenson, which are all big names as you'd expect from the deep field. But then you also get Siwoo Kim, KJ Choi, Tim Clark. You know, who had these guys to win the Players' Championship, the most difficult field in golf? This is a course and a tournament that really brings out the volatility, which is interesting. So let's continue to go down here. Patrick Reed, again, another 8th place finish last year, 4 straight top 8s, including the win at the Masters. He continues to pop off. Phil, we'll talk about Phil. I'm going to love Phil as well. Bryson, going to continue to love Bryson as well. You know, 3 out of 4 starts, he's finished in 4th place or better. So that 8,000, so let's see, 8,300 at Bryson to maybe 8,900 with Paul Casey. I will have as many of those guys in my lineup as possible, outside of maybe Tiger. And this is, again, not an indictment on Tiger. I talked about this with Pat Mayo last week. His current form does not scale well on DraftKings. Okay, so that means his finishing position is better than his DraftKings points, essentially. He's not making enough birdies to drive up his DraftKings scoring. He's completely dependent on where he finishes in the tournament. That's not a great type of player that I want to start rostering here. If you want to bet him, if you want to do that, like, that's fine. He doesn't fit the DraftKings scoring model that we're looking for right now. Okay, let's run through a few more quickly because there's just so many names to talk about. Down here at 7,700, Brooks Koepka has now, you know, he played the match play. Then he got back into it last week at the Wells Fargo Championship. He wrapped up and finished strong on the weekend. Let me see if I can pull up his weekend numbers real quick. Okay, I did pull up his line here from last week, and I was wrong. I thought he was actually, maybe I was thinking of someone else who closed much better than Koepka, but still, it's nice to see him shake the rust off, put 4 rounds together, make a cut, and now he gets to play Sawgrass, where we've seen him, you know, put together a couple of nice finishes in a row. $7,800 is probably too cheap for Brooks Koepka. There's a few others down here that are nearly criminal. Tony Finau, one of them, right? We talk about Tony Finau basically every single week. He does not have a great run here at Sawgrass, but he's starting to turn into the type of player where, you know, the greens don't matter anymore. The course doesn't matter anymore. He is unbelievable. So let's look at he closed out great on, yeah, so here we go. So on the weekend, he goes 71-66, finishes T21 last week. I saw a stat that was, I think he finished top 5 in DraftKings scoring last week at the Wells Fargo, which this is the opposite of Tiger, where a guy who is not remotely dependent on his finishing position, he can make a ton of DraftKings points just based on how many birdies he can rattle off, his tendencies to make eagles, things like that. He's going to be more volatile, but he is a great DraftKings scoring option. Let's see who else might be here. Luke List continues to play well. We've talked about him. Still at $7,400. That's fairly inexpensive. Let's see who else might pop off here. Oh, we're going to talk about Webb. We're going to talk about a lot more of these guys on the tour stats section. Webb, pretty criminally underpriced, right? No worse than a 21st in 5 of his last 6 starts. 16th place finish last year. You can see when we get to the odds section, he is going to be underpriced compared to his peers, according to Vegas. So Webb Simpson's going to get a lot of my dollars. And the good thing about this week, with how much value there is in that $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 range, call it $7,000 to $9,000, you probably don't have to go really low here. So you can go get the defending champ, Siwoo Kim, at $7,200. I won't be playing him that much. But you can go out and you can grab some of these guys, right? And you don't really have to buy really low. I'm trying to see if there's anybody I would even want down here. Maybe I'd consider Sean O'Hare just because he's been playing well. Outside of that, I mean, I guess Martin Kaymer, okay. Outside of, if you're a big course history guy, outside of his recent form, Kaymer's been great here. I don't know if you saw it when we went to the course history section here. Kaymer has played this tournament 9 times. Essentially the second best Sawgrass performance of anyone who's played at least, 5 starts here. So Kaymer has had a good run, not recently, but maybe he can find a little bit of magic. For $6,900, I think that's okay. But you really don't have to spend down here just because there's so many solid options here in the middle of the pack. So I'm gonna be able to. It's very similar to the Masters, where we're gonna be able to make a lot of really solid lineups with like 6 big name players are going to be in your lineup. They do that for, DraftKings does that for a lot of reasons. It's a deep field, and there's going to be a lot of casual players this week, so they want you to be able to make essentially really great lineups, and that's what's going to happen this week. Let's go over to the course history and see if we just missed anyone here. If there's anyone who has played enough events for us to care. Matsuyama's here, averaging 75 DraftKings points, and he's never had a top 5. That's good to know, right? He's the type of guy who can get hot and is not dependent on his finishing position. Zach Johnson's up here as well. Just a very solid scorer, hasn't missed the cut since 2008. Adam Scott, man, I might go down with the Adam Scott ship. I just think he's going to be able to turn it around. Hasn't shown much recently, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that. A lot of people have been tweeting me that I'm wrong, so tough to say. All right, let's jump over to the tour stats here, and let's go to the correlation model here. So if you're new, I take all of the PGA Tour stats for the last 8 years. I take all of the DraftKings results for the last 8 years, run a regression model, and see what PGA Tour stats matter for each course. So we have great course history here. Sawgrass has been the host for as long as it matters for this model. And we get some really interesting things. So we've seen this SFDA stat pop up quite a bit. So no surprise to see that. No surprise to see Birdie or better on here just because they're so heavily involved in DraftKings scoring. But there were a couple that were more relevant to Sawgrass. It's par 4 scoring. Bogey avoidance, which is interesting because this course can bite back, right? It's not like a lot of weeks where it might just turn into a birdie fest. This place can bite back. And then this is putting average. So it's actually putts per round. I don't think it's a perfect stat by any stretch of the imagination, but it does show up here. So let's run through these pretty quickly. SFDA, again, this is a strokes, it's almost like a strokes gained against the field statistic, but it's a per round stat. I like it a lot. DJ and Henrik Stenson, far and away, ahead of the rest of the field. And you'll notice it's a lot of studs, right? As it should be. That's kind of what this stat is measuring. But there is some value here. After you get through the studs, Phil Mickelson. He's going to pop up a lot here. Phil Mickelson. Then you get down here, Paul Casey, Webb, and Finau. Those are going to be staples in my lineups, okay? Those four guys, Stenson, DJ, like I'm going to have a lot of these players. Birdie or better, DJ, Phil Mickelson. If you want a little bit of value, Pat Perez, who if you're going to go that low, I don't know, you probably don't need to. Here's Bryson again, right? He's not only coming in and putting up top 4 finishes in 3 of his last 4 starts, but he's also making a ton of birdies along the way. Great for our format. Who else here? Par 4 scoring. Stenson again. JT and DJ. Okay, so you have the studs. And then here's Phil down here at 8,400. Trying to see if there's anyone else who pops off here. Obviously Streelman and Harman, but, you're looking for kind of multiple elite stats at this point, which Streelman actually pops off for par 4 scoring and bogey avoidance. So if we flip over there, here you go. Stenson again. Stenson is leading a ton of these categories. DJ is up here. Here's Webb Simpson again. Webb is probably criminally underpriced. I'm starting to think, not only just because of his recent form, but his game would indicate that he's a pretty good match for Sawgrass right now. And then putting average, again, not a perfect stat, but worth noting, Adam Scott is dead last. Phil Mickelson, number 1, right? So you're starting to see the same names here. And then this is where you get a little more volatility, guys who can roll the putts in, a lot of value guys. So if you're looking for value, consider these guys. Here's Jimmy Walker, who's obviously won a major before. Tiger Woods, he's won a few majors before. But again, not a perfect stat because we've seen Tiger struggle so much on the greens, at least last week too. So not a perfect stat, but it is a correlator for this week. So before we flip back to the cheat sheet, just to take a peek at this for salary purposes. Blue is better, green is great, red, orange, those are bad. So if you just look at this from a salary standpoint, you see DJ, just across the board, checking off all the boxes. JT's there as well. Then you go down and you grab, here's Stenson, absolutely elite in 3 of these categories. Then you go down to Phil, pretty elite in 3 of these categories, maybe, really good in 4 of them. And then you can start to scroll down and see, does anybody pop off anywhere, right? There's Pat Perez for birdies. Here's a couple guys on the greens that we talked about. Streelman has a couple check marks for him. So really interesting little way to look at this. And then let's wrap it up like we always do with the Vegas odds compared to DraftKings pricing. If you've never seen this before, what took you so long? No. Salaries are usually created for, the Vegas favorite is the highest salary player, second biggest favorite, second highest salary, so on and so on. It's generally speaking, it's built out like that. So how good did DraftKings do this week? Remember, they released this pricing. No, they didn't release this pricing early. The contests were up early, but the pricing just came out. So disregard that. So let's see how they did. Jason Day, same odds to win as Rory, and he's $200 cheaper. Who else do we have here? Patrick Reed, 30-1. Nope. Hold on. Let's find somebody. Here we go. Phil. So Phil is 33-1 to win this event. He's $8,400. He's cheaper than Patrick Reed at 87, Stenson at 88, Paul Casey at 89, Sergio at 9,000, and he's cheaper than all of them, right? Same odds to win. Let's see here. 50-1. That pricing's pretty strong. Here's the 55s, right? Can't lay, pretty significantly cheaper than Tommy Fleetwood with the same odds to win. Here's Webb. Webb at 80-1. Cheaper than Daniel Berger at 100-1. Really, this just doesn't feel right. Let's actually sort this by salary and see if we can see it this way. Yeah, so now you're looking for kind of green, which is undervalued, right? So here you go, Horschel at 55 to 1, same price as Cam Smith, who's 66 to 1. I think Berger's number had to have come down by now. He's got to be like 50 to 1 to win this thing. So you can see there is some value, but I'm not sure you're going to need to find as much value this week as we have other weeks. It's just going to be one of those opportunities to just pile on as many studs as possible. So it's a deep field. We're going to have to make some decisions. That 10,000 and up range, Rory down to DJ, is going to be very important. Where are you going this week and why? Because there's not a ton of great course history out there for long stretches. So let me know who you're going to play out of those top 5 guys. I will probably be heaviest on DJ. Tweet me. It's at DFS On Demand, or leave a comment below. Talk to you guys soon. Good luck.